Today's topic is resistance training for the upper body, especially the extremities, for the upper extremities, for the upper arms. So as we age, we develop what's called age-related sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is a medical term, a technical term for muscle loss. We know that as we age, our muscle mass starts shrinking, our fat reserves start growing. So we have to do two things. One is to ensure that our fat quantity, the amount of fat that we have in our body is at a healthy level, and we have to protect ourselves from age-related sarcopenia or muscle mass. This happens because of our lifestyle, because of our sedentary habits. You know, when we were hunter-gatherers, when we were wandering around, roaming around in the forest, we were pretty active. So we protected our muscle mass until much later in age, until a predator or an infection or an accident killed us. But for age-related muscle mass, why is muscle mass important? Because muscle is where a lot of activity happens within our body, a lot of metabolism happens. It is where insulin resistance starts to develop. Insulin resistance, as you know, is a predecessor for type 2 diabetes and many other metabolic diseases, metabolic problems, chronic inflammation, autoimmune diseases, dementia, cancers. Many things are linked to insulin resistance. So as we age, we start developing insulin resistance. To prevent that, we need to ensure that we protect our muscle mass. And one of the good ways to do that is resistance training. So resistance training is pushing against resistance, right? As the word denotes. So let's focus on the upper body, especially the upper extremity resistance training in this session. I'm going to describe a few techniques that you can do at home. Like you, I'm a regular guy. I don't have much equipment at home. I have a few exercise equipments, as you can see here. One is this reclining, supportive stool or chair that I can lean on and do resistance training. So you can buy this. This is not too expensive, and you can have this at home. Even if you don't have it, make sure that you have a stable, flat surface that you can comfortably sit. And all I'm going to show you is using this 5-pound dumbbell. This is all you need for beginners or for intermediate resistance training maintenance. So whenever you think of resistance training, think of muscle groups and the joints associated joints. So muscle groups. So we are thinking of muscle groups of the palm of the hand, muscle group of the forearm, and muscle groups of the upper arm, shoulders. And so we're just going to focus these muscle groups in this session, in this video. So when you look at muscle groups and the associated and the related joints, you pick a dumbbell, you make sure that you support your, I'm going to lift the leg up so you can see it, but you actually have to put it at a level, at a flat surface, flat level. So you make sure when you are using one shoulder and one group, the rest of the one joint and one group, the rest of the joints and the rest of the muscle group should be held constant. In other words, they should be supported so that they are not moving. Your goal is to move the intended muscle groups and the joint involved. So now the focus is on the hand. So you start moving by your target joint and the muscle group by resting the rest of your body on a flat surface. So you start with this, you build your way up. You don't start doing 50 of these when you start. You do 5, maybe 10, depending on the weight. I'm starting at a low weight of 5 pounds. You can do this, or you can do 1 pound, 2 pounds, or 10 pounds. Don't go beyond that if you're a beginner. So you start with this, do 10 of these. That would count as one cycle. And then switch your hands, do another 10 of these, that counts as one cycle. So this between the two hands, so you have done resistance training of the hand muscles at the hand joint. So move on to the next joint, which is the forearm at the elbow joint. So you do this, you have just done this, and now you support this hand and this joint here. So you are not moving. So make sure the next joint would be this. So actually the next joint is the forearm, right? So when you're doing this, you gently start moving at this joint. I mean, you gently start flexing these muscles here with this. Don't do this. I mean, you can do this joint is involved, but just do a little bit of this resistance exercise at the wrist joint, because these muscles of the forearm, the tendons, the origins of the tendons, and this is called insertion, and this is the origin of the tension of the joint. The insertion of most of these muscles go into the hand. So when you put resistance at the hand, you are actually moving this. You are actually giving resistance to the forearm joints. So you can do this, you can see, you can put your hand, you can see these muscles flexing here, and then move on to this biceps muscle. So this happens. So make sure that you're not moving the shoulder, you're not doing this, you're not doing this, right? So you're keeping this shoulder joint and the elbow constant, steady, and just make the movement at the biceps joint. Once you're done with this, and then this the back side of the hand is the triceps. So you go back, you keep it as straight as possible. If you can't do it, just put it like that at an angle. Make sure that you're not moving this joint. You keep this joint straight, and you are just moving this triceps, this muscle up here. So that is the resistance training of this triceps. You do this 10 times and exchange. Do this again 10 times. There are many ways of doing it. I'm showing you one way that you can do at home without much equipment, without lots of bells and whistles. All you need is a dumbbell, 5-pound dumbbell, maybe 1 pound, 2 pound, 5 pound, 10 pound. So after you're done with this, now you're moving up to the shoulder joint. At the shoulder joint, you can do 3 ways. One is the frontward movement. So see, you're not moving any other joint. The shoulder joint, you can actually feel the front muscles of the shoulder joint flexing, and do this 10 times. Exchange the hand, do this again. See, you are doing straight, straight, right? After this, you go on and sideways, just sideways, you're doing that. Once you have finished this, of course, you're always doing it both hands, one after another. And the third one is backwards, right? The backwards. So make sure that you have the backward movement too. So once you're done with this, then you lean back, stabilize your spine. Don't let your spine get weak or hurt. Stabilize your spine, lift your both arms like that with the weights, and then do this. Straight, horizontal, straight, only up to that level. Each muscle group is involved in a particular complex movement in our body. So You have to learn a little bit of anatomy if you have to, or at least get some introduction if you are completely new to the anatomy and the physiology part of it. When you are done with this, you can come forward to this, forward. Again, this is, you can do this 5 or 10 times depending on your level of comfort. So this, and after that, when you bend forward and do this, you are actually stretching both the back muscles of your back and the shoulder. So we will see this, the back muscles, in a separate video, but this one you have covered the wrist and hand, the forearm, biceps, shoulder, both sides, and make sure that you hydrate yourself enough before and after you do this. Stretch yourself and breathe. Don't hold your breath. Make sure your stomach, tummy is coming forward and backward, which means that you're pushing your diaphragm down. Make sure you focus on your breath when you're doing it. You know, most of us are lost in some kind of thought when we are exercising, but focus on your breath when you're doing it, because that puts you in a state of presence. Being in the present is important when you're exercising, because that's when you focus on your breath. Getting enough oxygen is important to the muscles when you're doing it. So focus on your breath when you're doing it. Stay at a calm mind. Try to exclude every thought from your mind, except focus on your breath and the work you're on, which is the exercise. Focus on the muscle group that you're working on. Focus on your breath and the muscle group that you're working on. Keep going back to it. If your thoughts are scattered everywhere, bring them back again. So being mindful when you're exercising is as important as the exercise, as the physical exercise itself. So resistance training helps us to keep a good amount of muscle in our body, so that you can prevent metabolic diseases like insulin resistance, autoimmune diseases, and just keep you physically going, physically active. You know, exercise, because most of us live in a sedentary, sometimes because of our jobs, you know, we work 8 hours a day, 6, 8 or 12 hours a day, depending on what kind of work you do. Most of us live a sedentary life. Sedentary life is when you do not meet at least about 10,000 steps a day. Even if you meet the 10,000 steps a day, most of the steps that we do are not burning calories, are not burning energy. So it's important that as we age, we do some kind of resistance training, at least 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on how you can do it. But 20 minutes of resistance training, some amount of aerobic exercise, they're all important for our metabolic health.